Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtime series, proudly powered by leadershipbydesign.co, where we aim to add value to people's lives. You can listen to us live every Wednesday and Thursday at lunchtime on ebizradio.com, where we talk everything leadership, coaching, and marketing. And you can catch the latest Lunchtime series on all your major podcast channels today. On today's coaching segment, we have a coach, counselor, a consultant, is an experienced talent leader and career expert, and specializes in equality, diversity, and inclusion as a champion and educator, helping people grow in their personal and professional lives. Please welcome Martyn Scott Thomas. Hey, Martyn, how are you doing?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you doing?
Good. You're all the way from up yonder, right? Somewhere in the UK.
Yes, that's right. I'm from the UK, and I am currently living in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So that's where I am right now.
Yeah. Well, my favorite place in the world.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah, I can't get enough of it. I've been more than once. I've been more
Okay.
than thrice.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm steadily heading in that direction.
Okay. Well, strangely, in Amsterdam, the sun is shining, which is quite unusual. So it's very sunny and very nice. So a good time of year to visit if you're feeling like a vacation, Kevin.
Yes, no, it's definitely, and it's winter time here now, so like it's I should be planning a bit of a holiday. But Martyn, so I saw you online, and we sort of crossed paths on LinkedIn, and
Yes.
generally that's where I find a lot of my conversation and interesting people to speak to and
Yeah.
people to connect with. Um, and why don't you first start off with just telling us a little bit about you, what it is you do, and what we are going to be talking about today?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to talk to you, and I get very excited when I have the opportunity to talk about diversity and inclusion, which we're talking about today. Who am I? Well, I guess I'm many things and have been many things in my life. I started out as an actor. I then maneuvered my career into television behind the scenes, and then I started working in human resources. And I've been working in HR for quite a long time, specializing in talent acquisition. So I've been a recruiting leader for some big brands, and have led some very big teams, really focusing on talent delivery and recruiting strategies. And I've always been somebody very passionate about diversity and inclusion. I have always been very involved and very keen to advocate, to educate, and to discuss those topics. Um, and then I guess coming out of the pandemic, I felt like I wanted something to do that was more kind of meaningful and important to me. And I began studying, and I then also took a very fortunate career break. I was able to travel the world and experience lots of things. And I'm now in a position where I've set up my own coaching and counseling practice. It's an online kind of service offering. And I help, well, my aim is to help people, as you said, in both their professional and personal lives, with whatever challenges they may face. I do, I guess, to a degree, focus on the LGBTQ plus community from a kind of counseling, coaching perspective, but then also more broadly speaking with careers, people leaders, with helping them grow in their careers and in their business and their work. So I think that covers it. I think.
It's an exciting life you've lived here. It's wonderful. So, I mean, when we first started, one of the conversations that I thought, and that you sort of touched on now is, really looking through the lens of diversity and inclusion, and why, educating people even further and even more, and why not do it in Pride Month to kind of celebrate what the LGBTQ plus community actually mean, and just to recognize the importance of recognizing that community. One of the stories I shared with you around Black Lives Matter was, when it first came out, people had such a problem with the fact that people were using that as a slogan, and white lives matter as well. And that wasn't the point. The point wasn't that white lives didn't matter. The point was that throughout history, Black lives have been seen as a minority, and really hasn't been given a voice, right? And I only recognized that conversation when I was the minority as a white gay man in South Africa.
Yeah.
Where I'm of the minor minorities in South Africa. It becomes it's almost like a sort of a, what do you call it? It's like a beaming light shining really small onto this group of people. And you kind of feel like you stand out a lot. Until I really got that's what Black Lives Matter meant. I realized, that's why that we have Pride Month. It's not about people getting dressed up in dresses. Well, for some it is, and that's perfectly normal and perfectly fine. But it's a simple consideration, and I want to say the acknowledgement of being allowed to just have a space in the world. And I think that is such a necessary conversation to be had.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, first of all, you're right. It is June, so it is Pride Month. So happy Pride to you and to everybody. And yeah, it's really nice to hear your kind of your story there about how you have come to kind of put yourself in the shoes of others and have connected that to who you are and what your experience is. And you're right, it is about shining a spotlight and giving people a voice. Just this weekend, actually, I went to a small town in the Netherlands called Utrecht, and they had Utrecht Pride. And it was so beautiful and touching to watch the canal parade. But what was very special was that each boat, because we do it on water here in the Netherlands, each boat kind of represented and gave a spotlight to and educated on different voices and different people within the community. I remember seeing a boat that represented or was representing trans people and gender, and it had a very clear message: your gender, your choice. And it was so important that they were there, being present, being visible, and showing people that they exist and that they are valid and loved and appreciated, and also, being visible to show to people that they can learn to understand difference and other people and respect choices. And it's really important to have representation and to give all voices a platform. And I find it interesting as well that you use the word kind of minority, because I was thinking about diversity and inclusion, and specifically, what does diversity and inclusion mean? And I'll use my terms now, but I guess to me, kind of diversity and inclusion, and especially so in the workplace, is really about rooting out bias, and it's about equal opportunity, and it's about equality. And there's lots of things to be done and a lot of work to do to strive towards that in all settings. But so important to ensure that people have access to have their voice and be seen and be visible. And it's really good conversation, an important conversation, especially today, to be having with your friends, with your family, with your community, and in your workplace. And that's really why I wanted to kind of talk about leadership and leaders, and why it's so important in the current climate to be leading through the lens of diversity and inclusion, and to kind of educate yourself on what that means and what your role is in kind of creating an environment where everybody has equal opportunity and everybody is visible and everybody has a voice. You know, what does that mean and what does that look like?
So one of the things you mentioned, is you know, a leadership experience that you were having. It's a personal story. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, listen, I have many stories. I've been a leader for a long time, and it's interesting being a leader, because you can, I mean, I learned a lot about people, but it also taught me a lot about myself. And I guess in my kind of recent role, and certainly in the latter stages of that role, we were going through a pandemic, and I more than ever learned the value or the importance of inclusion, because not for the first time, but I guess the most prominent time I've had to really think about inclusion was during that time where I had to lead through the lens of well-being, I guess, as well as kind of inclusion. And I say that because my team was based all over the world, really big team, dispersed, and everybody was having their own unique challenges with the pandemic. So wherever you were, you know, each country was reacting in a different way. Individuals were based in completely different locations to their family, and they were having their own unique experiences through the pandemic. And of course, you know, transitioning from in person to online, how do you ensure that everyone feels or could feel included and have a voice in a digital space? And I guess it taught me a lot about inclusion, about how people are different and have different preferences in how they share their story, how they provide ideas and inspiration, how they like to interact, how they like to show up. And so I guess my learning was to really hone in on the unique difference and needs of everybody in my team, and try and create an online safe space and environment where everybody could contribute. And it wasn't easy. I didn't always get it right. You know, I had to try different things. But what's really important is to really include your people in the conversation, you know, asking questions, you know, like, how do you feel, and what do you need, and what do you need from me? Really kind of creates that safe environment for people to really have a voice and share and feel that they can be themselves with you. I guess that's what's come to mind really in terms of thinking about inclusion in the more modern times. And of course now, since the pandemic, you know, we still are spending a lot of our time online as well, and you know, we're working with people in different locations. And so for leaders, they have to think differently about how they kind of manage their teams and how they cater to all their team's needs, whilst thinking about being inclusive.
So, I mean, one of the questions you have here is really speaks to educating leaders and getting leaders to invest more time in educating themselves on why this is important. So why should leaders invest time on this?
There's a lot of reasons, right? This is a really important topic, and it's about first and foremost, it's about doing the right thing. And I think, in the world today, there is such inequality and social injustice and challenge and discrimination and unfairness. And organizations understand that it's important for them to demonstrate why these things matter to them and what their view on it is. And it's important because their customers demand it, their clients demand it, their employees demand it, and their job seekers, demand to understand, what do they stand for, and particularly in regards to this topic. But more broadly speaking, it's important for leaders to educate themselves because they have a role and a responsibility. They have a role and responsibility to understand, to be a role model, to educate, to guide, to support. And so they have to invest in understanding what diversity and inclusion means. And it's really broad ranging because you do have to look at diversity as multiple things, actually, because diversity is a term that that really is about accepting and embracing and having a broad range of knowledge and perspectives and understanding, working around you. But it's also, from an inclusion and equalities perspective, it's about ensuring that, your team in your workplace represents the world that we live in, and that you're eliminating the risk of bias and discrimination and miscommunication and those sorts of challenges. And so to really stand up and promote and advocate and encourage and support people from all walks of life is really important, whether that's race or gender or religion, or socioeconomic backgrounds. There's such a broad range. And of course, as a leader, you cannot be expected to know and understand what it feels like to be something that you're not. And nobody, expects that of you as a leader, but there is a responsibility to take the time to understand and to acknowledge difference and to support it and to understand it and to ensure that you are a role model for that topic. And there's so many things that you can do, and there's so many things that you can think about as well.
So, I mean, one of the questions that does come up for me while you're speaking is taking the responsibility to do that and investing time and energy to do it.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't, I mean, and that's one of the things that really sort of dawned on me when I realized that I was a minority as well.
Mm-hmm.
Country that really doesn't deal well with minorities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you kind of go, how do you get the leaders invested if they simply, because you don't know what you don't know until you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
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 How do you think as a coach and someone who's advocating for people to intentionally and actively make changes,
Yeah.
how do you help convince, or how do you help
Yeah.
them get?
Well, that is a huge part of the work to do, right? In organizations, providing the education is really important. And it's difficult, right? Because I've definitely managed people directly in the past who have been managers who, in a variety of ways, have struggled to understand the importance of this topic and the importance of why education is needed, broadly speaking. And I guess what's one of the best ways to really educate yourself or to understand why it's important is to start putting yourself in the shoes of other people, to start connecting and asking questions and understanding what the world looks like from their point of view. And I think that's one of the best ways that organizations have to help people understand and to help leaders understand why it's so important. And this is why, having things like employee resource groups are really important, so that they can be consulted upon, so that they can be engaged with, so that they can help with education, and so that they can create visibility. And I guess that's visibility and representation is also something that's extremely important. It falls into place with everything we've been talking. Unless there are a broad range of diverse leaders within an organization, there isn't going to be the understanding or the appetite from a large collective of leaders to put an importance on this topic. But the reality is, in the world today, most organizations now have diversity inclusion at the top of their agenda. It is now expected, as well as it being important for leaders to take that time to understand what it means. And it's broad ranging, and sometimes I see people being very overwhelmed by getting it right and being very fearful of not knowing the right thing to say and the right thing to do. And of course, we're all human and we can all get things wrong, but we can all also ask questions, and we can all invest in learning and understanding. So I think it's, I guess when you say why should they, I think my answer to that would be because it's a responsibility that they have. And beyond the kind of the equality kind of aspect of what we're talking about, there are much more broad-ranging benefits, right, for leaders to be prioritizing diversity inclusion. It is absolutely proven that having a diverse kind of workforce will lead to greater innovation and ideas and thinking, and have more creativity. It boosts performance, profitability. It has a lot going for it in terms of your employer brand, who you partner with, work with, who you recruit. And so, the benefits, as well as the importance of the topic, should, have every leader asking themselves, okay, what role do I have to play, and what can I do? And actually looking around me, what is happening in my team, and what do I know about this, and how am I showing up as an inclusive leader?
Yeah. So I mean, when it comes down to like those practical things, what are some of those very obvious practical things that we can start doing tomorrow? You know, like you've been mentioning some of them, but like, what are the things that people can actually do to start making this intentional practice and bringing it to the foreground?
I think there's lots of things they can do, a lot of things, and a lot of things that they can start doing tomorrow, like you just said. So I think one of the first things that they can do is to connect with and be a part of their internal employee resource groups. And perhaps if there are not employee resource groups in place that are shining a spotlight and representing for diversity, then perhaps it's an idea that they can put forward. So I would say that's one of the first things. I think to really partner closely with their HR teams and with their D&I teams, if they have a D&I team or D&I, individual contributors in their organization, to work with them to seek out education for themselves as part of their development, but also to provide that learning and education for their teams. So I think they can go and ask questions and look at who they can partner with from an educational perspective, and look at what they can do proactivity. Sorry, I can't say that. Their proactivity. What can they do for their learning? So there's a lot of resources online, a lot of free courses, a lot of articles, a lot of news stories, a lot of groups. I mean, if I just think about LinkedIn, for example, there's a lot of resource and support and learning available at their fingertips. A lot of groups, forums, organizations that they can follow and learn. And then I think it's about looking at practices within their organization and within their team. I'm thinking here about their hiring practices, their kind of their development and promotional kind of processes and practices, looking at kind of how they provide support, and how they do things in terms of, understanding difference within the, I'll give an example. In certain group settings, not everybody feels comfortable in a group setting to put their ideas forward. So recognizing difference there might mean that they look at doing some smaller groups or in one-to-one discussions, asking for contribution. So thinking about the ways in which they do things, are these practices supportive of unconscious bias and ruling that out of the process, and what is going on for them? So I think there's a lot they can do to do an assessment of where they are and how they do things. And then the last thing I would say is to talk to the teams individually. And I think, thinking about one-to-ones and having kind of those conversations with their teams and sort of coaching with their teams, to ask, at the beginning of the conversation, how are you doing? Tell me what's going on for you. To asking them things like, how are you feeling? Or how did you feel about that? Or how did that come across to you? Those sorts of questions. And then always sort of finishing with questions like, how does that sound? What do you need from me? What feedback do you have about this, about that? These questions help develop trust. They help create a safe space, and they help you grow and understand what more you can do. And so I would say everything I've just said to you, Kevin, is something that leaders can think about and start considering and doing, at work from tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And I think, just creating spaces, like safe spaces for people to voice that, they might want to, they might need to speak to someone about it. They might be, they might feel harassed about, or harassed at least, about something in the workspace. So I think, everything you're saying is so spot on. But I mean, in closing on today's conversation, because I think it's such a necessary conversation, what advice would you have for aspiring leaders out there who who have noticed that, you know, they need to start making a difference, they need to start paying attention, and they would like to do that. What
Yeah.
3 tips could you perhaps leave them?
Oh, 3 tips. I think the first, well, listen, the first thing I would say is try not to get overwhelmed. I said that a little bit earlier. You know, it's a really big topic. It's an important topic. It's a sensitive topic. And so it is very easy to fear getting things wrong and to not know everything. And so first and foremost, try not to get overwhelmed and focus on taking things one step at a time, and be curious, ask questions, talk to people. That's the first thing I would say. The second thing would be the education piece. Actually invest time in your education, whether that's online or talking to people, aligning with, you know, your relevant business partners, your employee resource groups. Really invest in your understanding and learning on this topic. And then I would say, you know, assess the situation. Look around you, talk to people, and ask yourself, what can I do? What actions can I do? Even if that first action is, I'm going to find a D&I online webinar, or I'm going to organize a coffee with the chair of this employee resource group. You know, just take things one step at a time. But I think most importantly, do something and understand the importance of the topic. And doing all those 3 things that I've just said will really help you grow and understand, and be a role model. Because, you know, being a leader means many things, but it also means being a role model. And a lot of people expect heavily on leaders to be perfect and to know everything. But leaders are human too. It's okay to make mistakes and be vulnerable. But it is also a responsibility to be a role model. And I think investing in your own personal knowledge, understanding, and development, and on this topic, is really important for any leader.
Fantastic. Martyn Thomas, thank you so much for chatting to us, and happy Pride Month to everybody.
Thank you, Kevin. It was a pleasure. Yeah, it was an absolute pleasure, and happy Pride Month. And pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much.
Martyn, before you go, tell us what's the quickest way to get hold of you?
First of all, you can find me on LinkedIn, Martyn Scott Thomas. You can also follow me on Instagram at MST The Journey. And you can also visit my website, which is www.mstpractice.com. So that's mstpractice.com.
Fantastic. Guys, that's Martyn Scott Thomas. And Martyn, I hopefully will chat to you soon. Have a fantastic day, and enjoy Pride.
Thank you so much. You too, Kevin.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Soon. Cheers.